Hello. Today we're going to talk about not just dry brush and like little edges, but actually using the pressure of your brush to change your mark and some spettery fun. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use for this one mostly my number 6 detail round brush. I'm going to get it nice and wet, and I'm going to pick up some paint here, and I'm just going to play with, as usual, mixing while I create it. I'm going to get a good amount of paint on the brush and kind of wet. So a good amount of water, good amount of paint. Get that little hair off there. And then I'm going to hold it over my paper and just tap it. Ooh, look at this spattery. One of the things that this does is it just sort of adds a little bit of background texture, and then you can play with it. It's kind of fun. You don't have to worry about just the blank white page anymore. If you get lower, give it one tap, you can get these sort of blobs, or like it's shooting off in different directions. If you go a little higher, you're going to get the smaller dots. But just practice, different amounts of water, different amounts of what you're going to, play with to put on there. Different amounts of color. What's going to work the best? If you use more water, I'll put more water in this one, then you're going to get bigger marks, and won't quite be as strong. And they might start to kind of blend together if you do that. See if I can get those closer. But it's just a nice way to activate the surface a little bit, to give it a little bit of something. If you have if you aren't going to be doing a wash in the background, it can be a fun detail to add. So there we go. You can make things closer, further apart. You decide. I don't know. Maybe there's more over here. There you go. Splatter. An option for you. There you go. Now, the next thing I want to show you is creating these interesting wet into wet surfaces, but we've been doing a lot with these big areas. Now I want to concentrate on little shapes. And I'm doing leaves because it's a nice way to practice. Let's see, I'm going to move this way. I like to get my edges by anchoring my hand on the table or on the paper. I don't want to touch on my little dots right now though. So I'm going to make a clean edge here. And normally, whenever I have a wash, wet into wet, I would wet the surface first, right? Now, because it's a small area, I can get away with setting these nice edges with the paint. And since I started over there, I'm getting a little bit of a lighter area here, which I kind of like. So I'm going to take some water, lighten it, and pick that up. And just like a leaf would be, oftentimes as light hits it, it's going to hit with like a different direction, where one side in shadow, one side is light, because they do have movement to them, right? They have these edges, they have some shadows. If I just set this down, let's see, I'll set it down in the sunlight. You can see there's different values and there's different colors in those leaves just by what's there. So I can do a lot with my paint to just play with, let's get that back on the screen, to play with the colors that are there and just get some different effects. So I just want to play. I just want to see what things I can do. Maybe I want to, as it's starting to dry, I want to add a little bit of detail to it so I can create an edge there. And it's still wet over here because I added more water. This might be a little too early. Oh, it's okay, but it dries pretty quickly. So maybe I put some of those little veins in there on that side. Maybe let's see what happens if I do it over here. So you see the difference between the paper being wet or dry, and I can play with those effects too. So again, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put in, maybe I do my stem here. Let's make sure this is where you can see it. And I'm doing a little bit of work with pressing the brush against the paper and then lightening my pressure to get either a thicker or thinner line. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute more too. And I'm using yellow and like this blue purple because they're complements, and they'll give me more of that nice value change. And I'm getting, it looks like a curved look to the stem. That's a great thing about complements. They do stuff like that. Now, I don't know, I'm going to put some green in here. Let's see what happens. Again, I'm going to create a wash. I'm going to outline my edge. It's already about dry. Good, because I kind of rested my hand there out of habit. And there I have this. Now maybe I want to play with some other colors in here too and just see what I can do And that's not going to stay, right? Because it's wet into wet. I'm gonna come this way so I can anchor this. A little more water on here. But I want to be able to play with these colors. Ooh. And just, now I'm still using this watercolor technique and using wet into wet, but I'm doing it in a way where I'm just letting the water kind of move and do things all on its own and seeing what it does, right? So let's leave that. We'll come back to that. And now the other thing I wanted to show you, again, playing with leaves, just, you know, I have some leaves to play with. I can change the way something looks simply by the way I'm using my brush. So I'm going to take some paint here. It doesn't have to be green, right? I can make my plants any color I want. I'm the artist. I'm going to make one line, and notice as I change the pressure, I can go higher or lower with my brush. I'm changing the thickness and the weight. So I pressed pretty hard up here. So that is giving me a darker value, and it's when I first started. Now up here where it's lighter, I'd already, you know, it's kind of like faded from the paper absorbing stuff, but I can really change the look. It's almost like ribbony. By pushing and pulling up on my brush, I can get different effects. So maybe now I want to do like a leaf here. I can start with the point and then press and then lift. Oops. And I can get, look, it's like a leaf. Look at that. So I press and then lift. And I can get these interesting little shapes. And because they're wet, I can put color in them and I can change them up. Maybe I'll do one here. Maybe I just don't press as much this time and I get a smaller leaf. Let's pull that color down a little so I can see it better. Maybe I just do mostly press and lift at the end. So what I want you to do here is just to play with weight by pressing harder on your brush or not pressing as hard. And I could, you know, I'm just practicing what happens, how I can change the movement and change the thickness of my mark based on, maybe I come to the side. And I'm using leaves as my inspiration for this because I feel like it's an easy way when I'm thinking of plants to think about, okay, what if there's like these little tiny sprouts over here? Maybe it's a little thing here. So this is what it would be like to get some really nice thin lines. And then up here, maybe what happens if I really press harder and lift and harder and lift. And it kind of gives me something to think about as I'm making these, but it also gives me a chance to play with different forms. So I end up with sort of this organic looking, leafy looking thing. I don't know. And I could do it, ooh, let's see what happens with the flat brush too. Ooh, this I'm gonna get brown now. Really browny. What about some red? That's better. I like that better. What if I do something where it's like from the side and down? Ooh, can I get a leaf looking thing that way? Or what if I pull it up? I want to come to more of a point. This doesn't look as leafy to me. It looks more like a plant. Oh, no, it's better. Maybe I go like this. Like, can I go up and down and up? And what kind of movement and what kind of marks could I make? So this is really just practicing the weight of the brush and practicing mark making so that I have more tools at my disposal for ways that I can play with this, my brush, right? How can I play with these things to get different interesting effects? Maybe I come back over here and I go back in with like some dry brush on top of here and play with my type of mark. So using leaves is the inspiration here. What kinds of things can I create with wet into wet and with brush pressure? a little spattery surface. There you go. Today's play.